All right, it is episode 13 of the Philly Sports Convo. I'm Jason Lee. Thank you so much for watching and listening to all these podcasts we've been doing. It's been so much fun. And my guest for episode 13, this guy's always been my go-to whenever there's big injury news in Philadelphia sports. And of course, we're talking about Joel Embiid with his knee. But this guy also does his own sports talk show, so we'll have him wear his analyst hat as well. He's multi-purpose, if you will, and he's my friend, Dr. Bruce Grossinger. Dr. Bruce, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining us here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm glad to be lucky number 13.
13, hopefully, in this case, will be a lucky number. Hey, look, listen, that was Will Chamberlain's number, right? How unlucky can it be, right?
I think it's great, and I remember him as a kid. I have a faint memory of Will Chamberlain playing in a '68 All-Star game with wearing that purple of the Lakers, but with my late father. So that's one of my great memories I had with my father. And you mentioned him, and that's a beautiful memory.
Yeah. Well, Will Chamberlain was one of the all-time greats. You know what, Bruce? I mean, and you know, you go back so long in sports like I do. That's one of the great things about sports. You know, every sports moment is connected with a memory. I mean, I remember hugging my dad after Super Bowl 52. That's something I'll never forget. This is one of the many reasons we love sports, right?
Definitely, you know, it connects family. My family, you know, we've been Eagles season ticket holders through my late father, my stepfather, through my brothers, all the grandchildren, and it also the Sixers. You know, since AI was there, my son and I have had the pleasure of attending, being season ticket holders. We're going tomorrow night. Or I wouldn't say tomorrow night. We're just saying at some point. Last night, I should say, because we don't want to time lock our show. God, we wouldn't want to do that.
Right. Well, I will tell people, just so everybody knows, we are recording this before Game 3, but it won't be released till after Game 3. So we're not going to get specific about Game 3. But, Dr. Bruce, we can get specific about Game 2. And I don't know about you, but I'm still not over that. I'm still pretty pissed off about it. How are you? How are you coping with it?
No, I'm still in this state of shock. Spence, just come here. I just lost it. I clicked the wrong thing here. But no, I'm really upset about it. You know, the night was going perfect. We had a Passover Seder with the whole family.
Right.
We were coming in. We had a 5-point lead with 1 minute and 7 seconds. And I didn't think there was a way they could blow it. I didn't think it was a blowable lead. And just what happened there just really stunned me. And looking at it, I can analyze it. The fact that, there's several aspects of it. The fact that Maxey apparently got fouled twice on the play, went to the ground. They tried to call timeout. And the fact that he gave up the ball and they scored. And also the thing that's most reprehensible about the finish is Hartenstein, who I consider an average center. The fact that he was bookended by Joel Embiid and by Tobias Harris. And if either one of those players would have boxed him out, the Sixers would have gotten a defensive rebound. They would have won the game. But none of that happened. Hartenstein flipped it out to Big Ragu, formerly of Villanova, Delaware, Michael Jordan. And the fact they won the game and they basically cut our hearts out, it leaves us with, statistically, a 7% chance of winning. Now, when you're down 2-0, you only have a 7% chance.
Yeah.
But if you take it, as they say, one game at a time, they have to win both games at home, and then it becomes a 3-game series.
Exactly. Yeah, but like you said, it is, at this point, you got to win 4 out of 5, and that is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, if you look at it like that, it's very daunting.
Yeah, it is. It is
the
daunting.
Knicks, especially at home, the Knicks have a great home crowd, and they haven't been there in a long time. And their team isn't going to wilt. And it's just been sad that we haven't been able to get out of the second round. And Joel Embiid, when we talk about him, he's finally technically healthy. They kept him out for 2 months to rest. And so this is the first time he's the healthiest he is now in years. He doesn't have an orbital blowout fracture.
Right.
He doesn't have a torn tendon in his shooting hand. So relatively, he's a little bit out of shape. But overall, I think the knee's okay.
I want to get back to. We'll get to Embiid in just a second, but
Sure.
getting back to the end of Game 2. Of course, the NBA comes out and they say that the referees essentially screwed up. Maxey should have gone to the line shooting 2. Nick Nurse should have been granted a timeout. I've never been one for conspiracies, Bruce, but I do have to wonder. Does the NBA want New York to be relevant again? The Knicks haven't been relevant in a very long time. It's the number one media market in the country. It would benefit the NBA if the Knicks are relevant. On the flip side, I really think the NBA wants to punish the Sixers for the process. They don't want the Sixers to be rewarded for how they tanked. I mean, do you think there's anything to that? And again, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I can't help but wonder that.
Well, I think it's more than likely that the referees are human beings. When you're in Madison Square Garden, it's just star-studded, really. The whole place was star-studded. To their credit, it was a very loud home crowd. It was deafening, and they turned out, just the way you would hope that they would. So I think it's more than that. I think it's that more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
The NBA knows that Joel Embiid is the meal ticket. The reason the Sixers sell out and the reason Josh Harris, they make a lot of money, they've been able to raise ticket prices every year. They've been able to raise playoff and ticket prices every year. And it's because of one guy. It's because of Joel Embiid. So I think the fact that Joel Embiid, if he could progress, let's say, to play the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's Doc Rivers against his old team, you've got the Greek Freak.
Yeah.
You've got, that would be an amazing matchup. And I think if you look at New York, they've got Jalen Brunson, but the average fan doesn't know about Jalen Brunson. They don't know the big ragu. They don't know about Josh Hart. And so I think it's more that in the moment, I believe the refs kind of swallowed their whistle, and that's a home crowd advantage. I think the Wells Fargo Center is going to be deafening tomorrow night.
Agreed.
And everybody's going to be standing. And the refs are only human, and I think they're more likely to swallow their whistle. There were 2 challenges. The first challenge was very obvious, went the Sixers' way. The second challenge, I think, if we look at it objectively, the Sixers should have won that challenge. But what I always say is you have to win it on the floor. The fact that Jalen Brunson was shooting terribly, 29%, and they still couldn't win the game. They couldn't get the decisive rebound. And it was really a 2-man game. The fact is, the Sixers, when they win as a team. And typically, they learn how to share the ball. Kelly Oubre Jr., Buddy Hield are contributors. They let Nico Batum shoot the ball. The game they beat the Heat, Batum had 5 3-pointers and 20 points.
Yeah.
The way they're going to win is not just doing a high ball screen between Maxey and Embiid and expect them to beat a real live NBA team like the Knicks. And that's what I really see. Granted, the end of the game was disappointing, but also another thing that irks me, and I'm sure Jason yourself, you have Hartenstein. You have one big. All you do is if he fouls out, you win the game. There's not even anything to talk about. And I'm sure Nurse told him.
That's a good point.
Joel,
yeah,
get down low. Get down low. You would foul out Hartenstein. There is nobody who could guard them and nobody who could protect the rim other than the one guy. But instead, Embiid was like moping around outside the 3-point line, resting and not going low. And that was a tactical error that portended one of the contributing factors in the loss.
All right, and this is why I wanted to have you on, because as you and I talked about on the phone before we started recording this, it's like I think of you as a doctor, as a medical expert, but you're a damn good analyst too. That was just some good NBA analysis right there. And out of the two of us, it figures you're the more logical one. So thank you for that. But I
think you have a great conspiracy theory. I like to bounce. You bounced off the analytics, and you're halfway right. I think the fact that they're in the Garden in the America's Showplace with that tremendous crowd and all those stars, I think that had an influence.
Well,
yeah,
you're probably right.
But I think the Sixers lost the game on the court. They shouldn't have been in that precarious situation, and they should have gotten one defensive rebound. in Maxey, they should have thrown it. Maxey was triple covered. They kind of choked. They should have inbounded to somebody other than Maxey. There's many scenarios that I could vision the Sixers winning. And the one scenario was the one that actually happened. It caused them to lose.
Yeah. Is it me, or do they always seem to have trouble inbounding the ball? I mean, do they not work on that in practice? I don't understand that, Bruce. But I want to get back to
Well, you know what's funny?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, Nico Batum. Here's a very interesting thing. Nico Batum's one of my favorite Sixers. I actually know him a little bit. I've interviewed him before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Nico, he's been in the league for 16 years, and he's been on certain teams where they activate him only because he could do one thing. He's the best inbounder in the league. So I don't recall if Nico inbounded it on that play. I don't. He may or may not have. But the fact is,
I think it was Lowry.
I think it was Lowry, right?
Yeah.
But Nico, it's funny when you mentioned inbounding. So it's just a weird fact that Nico is considered one of the best inbounders. But Lowry, he played really well. If you look at Kyle Lowry, he had two offensive rebounds in that game that enabled them to go from down 7 in the half of the fourth quarter to enable them to go up 5 with 1:07. So that's Lowry. That's Villanova tough, Villanova proud. So Lowry, all 6'1" of them, he had 2 incredible plays, and he's a guy who's 38 years old.
Yeah.
And so, big Lowry fan, big Batum fan.
Absolutely, yeah. As am I. I want to get back to Joel Embiid, because obviously, you watch him. It seems like he's kind of laboring. It seems like it's taking every ounce he has to deal with that knee. What exactly, in layman's terms, for a dummy like me who doesn't have a medical background like you do, can you explain exactly what the injury is and what he's dealing with, and how hard it is for a guy like that to have to go up and down the court?
Okay, so let me give you the disclaimer that I haven't personally treated Joel Embiid, but I've treated numerous patients like him.
Got it.
So with that disclaimer out of the way, he had a small cartilage tear on the outside part of his knee, a lateral cruciate tear. And this is not a ligament, but instead a piece of cartilage, which is a shock absorber. If you're going to have an injury to the knee other than just a strain, which he didn't have, this is the one to have, because it's on the part of the knee that's not weight-bearing. And there are many players and there are many people who would have a small arthroscopic repair. And if it's just a regular person like you and I, we'd be back to work within a week. If it's a professional athlete, they might be back. Let's say you're a baseball player. Let's say you're we'll say a second baseman. You don't have to cover that much ground. You might be back within 2 weeks with that injury. When you're a 7'2", 300-pound guy, it is much more daunting. So yes, it's a nagging injury. It has not precluded him from playing, and I truly believe strategically, the Sixers did not want him to get re-injured. They wanted the rest really for 2 months, and then they tried to ramp him up. What I see really is the big barrier. He's not in shape right now. He's out of shape. He's gassed. He's holding his shorts from the first quarter on. And again, they really were in a dilemma. Do you bring the guy back and let him play the last month and risk of getting hurt? Just like he's had orbital fractures, thumb fractures, he's had vertebral, he's had every kind of injury. So I agree with the way it was load management.
Yeah, I agree.
And they decided we're going to hold him out, just let him play maybe 10 days, get into reasonable shape. And this is the best shape this is the best he's been in, because he's recovered, I'd say 80% from this knee injury. And you can see that he's scoring over 35 points a game. And again, he's run out of gas in the fourth quarter. He couldn't get that rebound. He couldn't do the defensive rebound against Hartenstein. But for the most part, he is, the knee, I'd say, is 80%. So he's going into a home game tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Obviously, you know, the recording. Sorry, it's hardwired to say that.
Yeah, right.
But you guys all know they may have won or they may have lost.
Right.
There
will be a game 4 either way.
If they did win, it's because the bench players, because the role players. Tobias Harris scored more than 10 points.
Yeah, right.
It's because Kelly Oubre Jr. is really good in the Wells Fargo Center. He's got a lot of energy. is because Bobby Hield is really good. The problem with these guys, when they go back to New York for game 5, if there is a game 5, they need to be able to find a way to pass the ball, to share the ball, and get these other players in shape. You're not going to win 4 out of 5 with only 2 players, with just Maxey and Embiid and everybody else just looking around getting a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, has been their downfall in game 1 and game 2 of the Knicks.
No doubt about that. I mean, game 2, Embiid and Maxey had 69 points, and what they have 101. So that's to your point.
So they did it, and Harris, your so-called max player, 10 points.
Yeah.
Kelly Oubre, irrelevant. Bobby Hield, irrelevant. Even Nico Batum, they didn't pass the ball enough. And Nico, as I said, where I sit, Nico's right in front of me. So he's a quiet guy, but nicest guy in the world. And so I do kind of have a rapport with Nico, and really a nice, wonderful person.
Okay, I think
he's got really soft hands. He can hit those threes. He can do it, but they didn't get it to him in rhythm. He didn't have the opportunity. So these other players at home for game 3, game 4, they need to share the ball. They need to get Hartenstein in foul trouble. They need to have guys driving right at him and getting. If you can foul him out, you're going to win the game, and that's my prescription. And they failed miserably because Hartenstein. Not only did they not foul him out, they didn't, and you didn't wear him down.
Yeah.
So if Embiid has got him in a low block, you're going to tire this guy out.
I got to be honest with you.
They didn't do any of that stuff.
I didn't hear much of what you said after you sit right behind Nico Batum. I think you must have some great seats, Doc.
Yeah, I'm in section 112, and the Sixers the Sixers bench is across from me, and Nico, on offense is planted right there. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I do get to talk to him a little bit.
That's awesome.
He's a gentleman. Anybody has a chance to talk to him. He has zero ego. He's been in the league for 16 years. Interesting story that almost everybody who went in the league with him is now, if they're still in basketball, they're now assistant coaches. So he looks around the league. He sees all of his contemporaries. They're all coaching, and he's still collecting a paycheck to do what he loves.
Yeah.
He's a family man, and he's a great team player. He's a great locker room guy, and just a big Nico fan. What can I tell you?
That's awesome. So okay, so getting back to Embiid, okay, because you hear a lot of the hosts on sports talk radio, a lot of the callers on sports talk radio, they say Embiid's injury prone, and you look at his history, that's logical. But is he injury prone, Dr. Bruce, or is it just the nature of a man, as you said, who's 7'2", 300 pounds, knees aren't meant to carry that kind of weight all the time, and just the nature of his size and the way he plays. So, I mean, I wouldn't call him a soft player. It's just the nature of a man that big, correct?
Yeah, what I really think is Joel Embiid still envisions himself to be a 16-year-old soccer player. He plays like that. He's incredibly nimble. His hand-eye coordination, and he likes shooting threes. But when you have a game where Joel Embiid shoots 10 threes and Buddy Hield shoots 3, as in game 2, you're not going to win a lot of those games. But if you look at his style, he's almost too fearless. You look at Jokic, that guy's built like a refrigerator. But Jokic, he knows his strengths and weaknesses. You never see Jokic ever go to the ground. And the problem with Embiid is his style. It's his style. He will take it at the top, of the three-point line. He'll basically drive. He'll try to go through 5 players, spinning, contorting, getting knocked down, sometimes flopping. But when you're that big and you're hitting the floor 5 to 10 times a game, that floor is not a trampoline.
Yep.
What are you going to? You're going to get hurt. You're going to have wear and tear. So I only wish, and I don't know if it's possible, for him to get out of the mindset of being a 16-year-old soccer player and think of yourself as a guy who's a 31-year-old massive individual. Put yourself in the low post, occasionally take a few threes, but don't just go haphazard flying around. He just flies around a lot and hits the floor. So I think it's the flying part and the hitting the floor part that's caused him to be so-called injury prone.
Right.
But if they could ever teach him to be more disciplined, keep your feet under you. Don't go to the floor. If you get fouled, and he goes to the line a lot, and he's willing to give up his body. He's almost fearless beyond reason, and he'll go to the floor in order to go to the foul line. don't go to the floor. So yeah, that's my
Yeah, no,
assessment. And when he was early on, when he came out of Kansas, he had a foot fracture. He had a compression fracture of the back. And I truly thought he might be injury prone. It might be prone to fractures. But luckily for him, he's had no fractures at all. So he's got a good bone density. And he's had random injuries. He got elbowed in the face and he blew out his orbit. That's not injury prone.
right.
If you elbow, anybody can have an elbow in the face.
Absolutely.
And our thumbs are not very durable. And anybody could get hit in the thumb and tear their tendon. So a lot of that is bad luck. This cruciate tear was, again, a better tear than an ace. There's 10 other injuries he could have had that would have precluded him from returning. So there's still hope. And again, you all know that they may have won. If they're down 2-1, you'll be watching this and you'll be anticipating game 4. If they win game 4, they're all square. So where I'm sitting today, not having, I don't have the vision of what's happening, but you all do. And if they're down 3-0, I mean, I think stick a fork in them. Nobody's going to come back from 3-0. But
agreed.
There's hope. Where I sit in this chair, I still have hope.
Yeah, and as do I, because it doesn't seem like the Knicks have too much of an answer for Embiid, but as we said earlier, it can't all be Embiid and Maxey. The rest of the guys, I mean, what was game 1? It was 42-7 in terms of bench scoring. You're not gonna win like that.
That was terrible. In game 1, they started out wonderfully.
Yeah.
In game 2, they sat Embiid and they got basically shellacked.
Yep.
So they got blown out in quarter 2. And they had such a deficit in game 1 that they couldn't fight back and win that game.
Yeah, I want to ask you, and as we said, you have not treated Embiid, but you have treated many professional athletes. And I'm curious, I want to get into the psyche of a pro athlete who's dealing with an injury. And when they're playing, what's the psychological effect of either just getting over an injury or playing with an injury? Are they playing and in the back of their mind, are they worried about re-aggravating whatever the injury was? And does that hinder their performance at all? I mean, I'm sure you probably talked about this with many athletes.
Definitely. And I think every sport's different. Every athlete's different. But when I see with Joel Embiid, I don't see that he is tentative. I see that if anything, he's reckless and gregarious. That's his personality. And he wants to put the whole team on his back. He wants to prove that he's the MVP. And I see to him, driving recklessly, haphazardly, taking fouls and sometimes flopping to the ground. So I just don't think it's in his head. I think he has a fearless mentality. Many athletes who are young have a fearless mentality. I've seen many who are very tentative. And I've seen people, even, I'm not saying Josh Harper is tentative. I mean Bryce Harper. But Bryce Harper, for instance, had a Tommy John surgery and a repair, and I think he's much more comfortable playing first base. He's much more gregarious at first base than having to play right field and having to throw a ball and risking a re-tear of his Tommy John, because a lot of people, they do have re-tears, they do have re-surgery, and the Phillies and Bryce himself have been very smart, I think, to move him to first base where he doesn't have to repetitively throw over and over again from right field. And the ballistic forces on his medial elbow are much less. So but I'm not at all making an analogy of his psyche. I'm just using a situation where a team and a player may opt for a less risky position.
Right.
And they would cause him to be more at ease. I think Harper's more at ease at first base.
Yeah, and speaking of Harper, and I think you and I actually talked about this on television after he came back. Just talk again about, because he came back really quick. I mean, that had to be impressive, especially to a guy with a medical background like yourself.
Yeah, I was really impressed. I think his return to play following a Tommy John, he had a ulnar collateral ligament tear. He had something called platelet-rich plasma, something I do in my own office.
Right.
And so he had an amazing response to PRP. It enabled him to not fully tear his UCL, and he made it through the playoffs. And at the very end, after they got eliminated last year, he was able to get a full Tommy John repair. And from all sources, he's doing great right now. And the reason he's playing first base is just so he will not re-tear his UCL. So I think he's a very brave man. He played great. Obviously, the bats went cold against Arizona, and that was really disappointing.
Oh, big time.
After beating the Braves, that was really nobody expected them. I think we all thought we'd walk through Arizona and make it to the World Series, and that, just like Philadelphia, it was disappointing ending last year.
Well, yeah, I remember after the Phillies won Game 2 at Citizens Bank Park, a lot of us were saying they may not even come back to Philadelphia. They may win it out in Arizona. Boy, were we all wrong.
Yeah, I certainly thought that. I mean, after the way they played, you're entitled to be overconfident. And even the beginning of this season, now they won a couple series against some really bad teams. But you look at the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves have to fear playing the Phillies because the Phillies have beaten them 2 out of 2. Yep. And the Phillies are playoff tough. And it's a real fun team to watch. You have a guy like Turnbull who he's a guy who just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, he's been
a really good
amazing
starting pitcher. Yep. Yesterday, obviously, Christian Sanchez, threw a stinker out, but for the most part,
but he's been pretty good overall.
They've got Nola, they've got Turnbull, and they've got pitching, and they've got the great lineup. So Phillies are really exciting, and we're all optimistic.
And they're built for the playoffs, as we've seen, because in a short series, when you've got that pitching staff, listen, over 162, the Braves may beat the Phillies by 9 or 10 games, but in a 7-game series, I like the Phillies' chances.
I sure do too, and I love Ranger Suarez. He's gotten off to a great start, and of course you got Nolan Wheeler. And in a short series, you might need 3 starters.
Yep.
And you could put some of the other guys in the bullpen, and that's been the story. And you've got great hitters, and if Castellanos is really hot and cold, he's gotten off to a really horrible start, but we've seen that before. We saw that in year 1, and last year he was able to carry the team through some of those games. We're just hoping he can get his stroke back. And again, you've got Schwarber, who's still leading off. They have a lot of fast players that I still believe you should have one of their faster players, whether it's Turner or Stott, somebody at the top of the lineup. Let's get some people on base, let Schwarber, but I think that the manager, Rob Thompson, is extremely loyal to a fault, and he likes to go with what works, and he's going with that this year. And when you play bad teams like the White Sox, if we played them, we'd probably be 162-0.
Yeah, right.
But we're going to be playing away in this particular streak, and we're going to be tested in this away stand is going out to the West Coast. You're going to be challenged.
You know what? I've actually, and I used to think exactly the way you did when it comes to Schwarber batting leadoff. I wanted to see Stott up there. I wanted to see Bohm, Marsh, whomever, but anybody but Schwarber, because my argument was, okay, if he gets on base, he's clogging up the bases because he's not fast. However, last podcast, I had Mike Sealski on from the Inquirer, and Mike made a great point. He said that Schwarber can do something that very few leadoff hitters can do. He can hit the ball 400 feet every time he's at the plate, and especially at the beginning of the game, when the pitcher may not be on his game just yet. He might be kind of, working into it. That's where Schwarber can kind of take advantage of it and get the leadoff home run. So, I mean, there's arguments either way, but I think I've come around.
I'm not totally against them.
Yeah.
Yeah, in other words, on one hand, Schwarber has had a lot of singles in the beginning. This is a very small sample size, but Schwarber's had some base hits. He's had a lot of singles, more so than usual. I'm not saying I'm absolutely opposed to him leading off, but it's an unconventional way to do it, and particularly in the cold weather. Some of these games, in my view, shouldn't have even been played. They've just been so cold. I think they should refund the fans who had bought, paid good money for those tickets. I mean,
that's why, Bruce, I don't go to games in April for that reason.
There are some horrific games. There's like 200 fans.
Yeah.
And imagine paying for it and say, I'm not going to go out and sit in 40-degree weather with 20-mile-an-hour winds. I don't care. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to eat my tickets. A lot of people did. And we use the Schwarber hypothesis. You bring somebody to Citizens Bank Park. It's a chill factor of 26 degrees, and they got to come up with good stuff against a guy who can hit it 400 feet. So Sealski is a great guy. I love listening to him.
He's awesome.
I love listening to him in Mac now. Glad announced that he's retiring, and again, that's no secret. We could pay homage to Glenn Macdowell, who's just been tremendous.
He's
and
one of the
I'm
all-time
sure,
greats.
just like Didinger, he'll find his way back.
Oh, no doubt.
But he announced his retirement. That's sad because I've really enjoyed listening to Sealski and Macdowell. They've been great on weekends.
Yeah, they're tremendous. Okay, so we talked about Harper and the Tommy John surgery, but I want to kind of piggyback off of that. All these pitchers who have to have Spencer Strider, I guess, was the last big name not that long ago with the Braves. Have to have they're blowing out their arms. They have to have Tommy John surgery. Now, the last time you and I talked about this on TV, I think you were at your office, so you had a visual. Are you able to explain what Tommy John surgery is without the visual?
Sure, yeah, I can explain it.
Okay.
So imagine there is you got this visual, you got my elbow.
There you go.
So imagine there's a ligament called the UCL. So the ulnar collateral ligament basically supports the ulnar bone and connects it to the humerus. And when pitchers pitch, it involves basically the elbow is a very mobile area. It involves flexing and extending, and it involves pronating and supinating. It involves, to spin a ball. So right now, imagine now, in order to remain in Major League Baseball, velocity is a very big thing. Back in the old days, you never saw anybody throw 100 miles an hour. Now you see pitchers routinely throwing between 95 and 100 miles an hour. And in fact,
every pitch.
To stay in Major League Baseball, not only are they measuring velocity, but also spin rate. So there's all this analytics. So some of the best pitchers, they've got to snap. They've got to snap it for those breaking balls. So if you imagine the repetitive nature, they have to use more force. You can think about it like physics. You need more force through the arm and the elbow to make the ball go faster. Obviously, you're using other generators such as the legs and the trunk, but there's no escaping the fact that the hand is the only part that comes in contact with the ball. So in order to generate the velocity and spin rate, these current pitchers have to exert and place much more force on their elbows. And by exerting that force, there's a much higher likelihood that they're going to tear or fray the UCL.
Okay. Well,
and if the UCL is the Tommy John ligament, and when you tear that ligament, it causes incredible pain. And if you fully tear it, you just can't pitch.
Right.
And if you partially tear it, like Bryce Harper, there are ways that you can nurse it back using regenerative medicine such as platelet-rich plasma or stem cell. But I read a couple articles after we spoke yesterday. So number one, there was actually a really good article in ESPN. It actually was this morning, and the whole article was about pitchers getting injured. So I recommend everybody see it. And there's about 10 different pitchers, many of them who've come back, some of them like Strider who are still out. And they talk about the need for speed, the velo, which is velocity, the spin rate. And they also talk a lot about the pitch clock. And the pitch clock requires them, and Aaron Nola was one guy who was very opposed to it. In order for the pitchers to really get set and be at their best and be mechanically at their best, the pitch clock works against them because a lot of them, they have to speed up their balance, everything.
Well,
and when they're just not perfectly balanced, what part of it's going to take the fall? It's going to be the arm. And they're just not going to be kinetically perfect.
Okay,
I believe a combination of the pitch clock and all of the problems with velocity and spin rate, that it's really causing attrition with the part of major league pitchers.
But just playing devil's advocate, because to me, I think the pitch clock is very minor compared to the first thing you talked about, and that was the need for speed. I mean, back in the day, you and I both remember, pitchers pitched at that pace anyway. They didn't need the pitch clock. Games were much quicker back then because pitchers were much quicker. But the human arm wasn't meant to do what these pitchers are putting their arms through game after game after game, and we're seeing that. So, I mean, as a doctor, I guess I'm curious. Baseball can't go on like this, right? You can't go on with your big names blowing their arms out all the time and getting Tommy John surgery and multiple Tommy John surgeries, right?
Well, I still think it's a matter of supply and demand. There's a big supply of pitchers coming out of college, coming out of high school, going to the minor leagues. And the big money and incredible money occurs in the major leagues. So I don't think so. Firstly, there's a lot of pitchers who are actually getting the Tommy John repair in high school, and that is helping a lot of them. So a lot of them are getting that repair early.
Wait, so that's
They're
a good
rehabbing
thing?
it, and well, it is a good thing because when you do that repair or you move, there's an ulnar nerve also. When you throw it, there are ways that you could almost prevent. So it's actually happening. So a lot of pitchers are getting the repair when they're younger. The vast majority are doing well. And so do I really think that there's going to be a pool of pitchers who are going to be slowing down, throwing between 90 and 95? Unfortunately not. And is Major League Baseball totally altruistic to the point where they're going to make alterations? It's really the guys who are going to be the major leagues are the guys who are going to get out the tremendous hitters in the MLB. So I'm just being a realist. I don't know if there's an end in sight.
Yeah, no, you're probably right about that. The better question is, all these young pitchers today who are having Tommy John surgery, do they even know who Tommy John was, Bruce?
I bet they don't know
They
at all.
probably don't know.
I remember him, with the Dodgers, and again, they don't know what it is. But I'm hoping that there are other things. I'm hoping there's certain training methods, nutrition, sports science, and again, stuff like platelet-rich plasma, which may be used to fortify the UCL. That's something that's not usually done prophylactically. I just think that these pitchers, all of them, deserve the best medicine, and I think the field of medical care is still evolving, and they're going to try to fortify and strengthen the UCL. I mean, it's a ligament, so it means it connects a bone to a bone. So it's not like a muscle that you can hypertrophy. But I believe that with all of the pitchers going down, not only with this, but also other things, as I said, the ulnar nerve, the UCL, olecranon bursitis, all the shoulder injuries, we're not even getting into the shoulder injuries. The pitchers also have a much higher rate of injuries to the shoulder on the pitching arm because of the velocity, because that rotator cuff is snapping and it's repetitively over and over and over again going through the same motion. So it's shoulder injuries, it's elbow injuries, wrist injuries, even neck injuries. So but again, we're focusing on the Tommy John because Spencer Strider was, very promising pitcher.
Yeah.
We certainly love to hate him here in Philly, but I have nothing but respect for him. And it's a shame. I never root for injuries. And again, I'd rather play the Braves, full steam. I'd rather lose with them being, fully staffed than having to rely upon an injury to have us win.
If you're going to beat a team, you want to beat them at their best. Absolutely. I want to tell you something I heard Bob Costas say a few months ago. I saw him on an interview, and they weren't talking about all the arm injuries, but they were talking about the lack of complete games these days compared to back in the day. I mean, I remember, well, it was a little before my time, but I remember seeing the stat. Robin Roberts, one year for the Phillies, threw 28 complete games in one season. Obviously, he didn't win them all, but he went the distance in 28 games, and obviously that would never happen today. I mean, pitchers don't even pitch one or two complete games per season these days. And Costas said that the reason was that, and you alluded to this, that back then there wasn't this need for speed. Costas said that back then guys would use their 95, 100-mile-an-hour pitches. They would use it situationally. If there's 2 outs in an inning and nobody on base, and you're facing the number 8 hole hitter, you're not going to waste a 95, 100-mile-an-hour pitch on him. You'll use the high velocity stuff when you've got men on base, when you're facing the heart of the lineup, and that's how those guys lasted longer, and that's how they pitched more complete games.
No, I think that's a great point. And there are guys who threw knuckleballs and sinker balls. Ket Tekulve comes to mind. There are guys who really were off speeds. They were off-speed wizards. And because people threw high 80s, low 90s, and you're able to really nurse it. It was like doing load management in the middle of the game.
Exactly.
They knew they were pitching the whole game. They were able to basically manage their velocity. And now these relievers are only pitching 1 inning, 2 inning. They more or less, and if they don't have the high velocity, they get hit. they find themselves out of the league, doing something else. So I think that's a really good point. We harken back to those games when we had Ranger Suarez throw a 5-0 complete game this year,
That's
which is
true.
kind of an aberration.
Right. It's a rarity.
My daughter Sutton, I have a daughter at Penn, and she went to her, except when she was a baby, she doesn't remember. She went to her first baseball game with her boyfriend at Penn, and he's a huge Phillies fan. And she saw a complete game shutout. And even though
she was at
she
that
doesn't know
game.
a lot about baseball, she was at that game,
Wow,
and
cool.
I was really happy that she got to attend a really good game.
That's awesome. See, it goes back to what we were saying before, memories that are connected with sports. She'll probably never forget that. I love that. All right, listen.
She'll remember that. She might even go to another Phillies game. Maybe I could drag her along sometime. Who knows?
All right. I want to ask you a couple more things before I let you go. I've kept you long enough, and I know I'm holding you up from having dinner. So I appreciate the time, Bruce. But I want to go back to the Sixers.
Not at all. I'm doing great. I've got a great meal coming, but it hasn't come yet, so
okay,
I'm perfectly fine.
Cool. I want to go back to the Embiid thing. Something I just thought about. The announcement, I guess, earlier this week, or maybe was it late last week, that Joel Embiid is going to play in the Olympics. When I first heard that, my thought was, no, I don't want to play in the Olympics. What are your thoughts on that?
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
I don't want him playing in the Olympics. He is a max player. He is the core of the team. And there's no reason to take a chance to get hurt in the Olympics. And so that's just a frivolous endeavor. And as much as I'm very patriotic, and I think the United States could win without Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And all this talk about how Game 2 ended, all the everything that the officials messed up and the Sixers blew a big lead. What kind of gets lost in the shuffle is the amazing game from Tyrese Maxey, and he was playing with the flu. I mean, it was unbelievable. So, can you kind of give us an idea? I mean, I know when I get sick, and I haven't had the flu in a very long time, knock on wood, but when I get sick, I don't feel like doing a damn thing, let alone running up and down a basketball court for 40-some minutes. How hard is that for a guy like Maxey to come out with the flu? How difficult is that for an athlete?
I think it's incredibly difficult. He's a very brave guy. He's got a ton of heart. I believe they loaded up. He didn't play in the shoot around, which is they probably were loading up with IVs and fluids all day long.
Right.
They also, we don't know what illness he had, but I'm sure they didn't want, they want to minimize the contact of the basketball to the other players. They didn't want somebody else coming down with the flu.
Sure.
I don't know how contagious it was, but they probably loaded him up with Tylenol to control his fever, and they loaded him up with fluids. And at halftime, they loaded him up with fluids, and he wasn't feeling his best, but he's got the heart of a lion. I love Tyrese Maxey, and him scoring 35 points, and Embiid leaving it all out. They had a 5-point lead with the minute 7.
Yeah,
and so, but. I believe if Maxey didn't play that game, they wouldn't have had it. They wouldn't have sniffed a chance at victory. So yes, it's really hard. And he's a human being like you and I, but we're not professional athletes. And he demonstrated the heart of a lion, and I tip my hat to him for even playing in Game 2.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, before I let you run, and you talked about your practice a couple of times, PRP. Tell everybody what you do, because first of all, I'm fascinated by this because it sounds like such a cool concept. Tell everybody about it, and if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Great. So I have a practice called Philadelphia PRP at Stem Cell Institute. Basically, it involves people like we spoke about with shoulders and knees, back problems. And if you don't want to have surgery, or let's say you failed a knee surgery and a shoulder surgery, you don't want a full-out replacement. A lot of the athletes come to see me, especially the retired Eagles. And you can see me. I'm right in Delaware County, right next to the airport. And we have people from all over the state and all over the East Coast that come to see me. And I'll give you a number, 610-521-6063. That's 610-521-6063. What I would do is I'd meet with you. I'd do a consultation. You might be a candidate for using your own cells to get better, like so many other people with PRP and stem cell. And there's another outfit. I won't mention their name because I don't want to get sued, but they're blitzing the radio and the TV, and they're a national outfit. They spend, I think, almost all their money on marketing, but we are the name brand.
I think I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Should you have one of those problems, let's say you have an arthritic shoulder, let's say you're an athlete at any age or a weekend warrior, you're playing in a Thanksgiving turkey ball basketball game, please come see me. I love helping people. Jason is a dear friend, and he's been kind enough to involve me in a lot of his TV, radio, and podcast endeavors. And it's certainly a joy to chat now with you, Jason.
It's always my pleasure. And also, I want you to tell people about your radio show. It's Rover Sports. It's you. It's your son, who's a really talented up and coming sportscaster himself. When and where can people hear that?
Well, the best way, all inclusively, is to go to my Facebook page. It's Bruce Grossinger, Grossinger. So if you friend me, I still have some reason. I haven't hit the 5,000 mark yet, so I could I'll accept your friendship. But even if you're not a friend per se, you could watch all of our content, Spencer and I, or you could listen on Tuesday nights from 7:30 to 8:30, 97.5 HD2, or you could go on any mobile phone, www.dbam.com. So in many ways, we are Tuesday nights, 7:30 to 8:30 with Spencer and myself, Dr. Stephen Lewis, who's another sports doc. We have a guy who coached D1 basketball, Josh Dacey, who's amazing. He's coaching now at Penn Charter. He's a lead assistant coach in basketball. So we're really blessed to have a couple sports doctors, a few coaches, and it's just like, if you listen to it, it's just like sitting at a bar, just like Jason and I are doing. And Jason's been kind enough to watch a lot of our content, and we really love what we do. And feel free to text in comments, and we'll respond to it. And that's the beauty of this digital era, doing these podcasts. You can really get involved, and you could text the host, you could ask the host questions, and we really love to do it. It's been something my son and I have done for almost 20 years, and I'm so glad to have this venue.
Yeah, no, listen, it's a good listen because it really does sound just like a group of guys kind of getting together, BSing, talking about sports, but they just happen to be on the radio. And if you can do that, that's a pretty cool thing, because not everybody can do that, Bruce. So kudos to you, man.
Well, I feel blessed to have it. I feel blessed to be able to work with my friends and my son, and to also be able to travel around, and we follow college football, obviously basketball too. We went to March Madness events. We traveled to the Masters. So this Rover Sports enables a father and son. I have one son. I love him to death, and to be able to travel all over the country and cover Eagles games everywhere. And so it is primarily a hobby, but it's something that certainly has drawn attention for me when I can help people out with sports medicine problems. So it's all kind of gone down the same pipe, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it's a great ride. And Jason, you and I are continuing it. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be on your podcast tonight for number 13.
Yeah, no, listen, this has been a pleasure, Bruce. I've enjoyed the conversation. So everybody, check out Dr. Bruce's practice. Check out the great radio show they do on Tuesday nights on 97.5 HD2, www.dbam.com, and Bruce Grossinger Facebook as well. Dr. Bruce, been a pleasure, my friend. We must do it again soon. I really appreciate it.
I sure hope so. Have a great night. Great night. Everybody, as we say, good night, good sports to all the viewers and listeners. And make sure you support Jason Lee and his podcast. Subscribe and like him all the time, because that enables him to continue doing what he loves to do.
Hey, can I make you my agent, Bruce? That was fantastic. I'll give you 10%. At this point, it's not much, but I'll give it to you. Bruce, thank you, man.
Well, thanks again.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Have a great night.
You
See
too.
you later. Bye-bye.
And everybody, thank you for checking out episode 13 of the Philly Sports Convo. We'll talk to you next time. Stay connected with us on social media. Join our Discord community and grab merch from our shop. The Philly Sports Convo is a Blue Eye Visual production.